No, I didn't come here to read motherfucking tweets.
I love that. That was my favorite thing.
Vanity Fair says your book is a nearly forensically reported examination of modern masculinity and an urgent call to action in the Trump era. The first question is the obvious one. Why did you choose to begin by writing this book about men?
Yeah, I think a lot of people might have been surprised, myself included. So I've spent obviously the last 10 years studying and reporting and researching on women. And as I was sort of operating in these spaces, which were amazing and beautiful and safe and loving, I also realized that there was something missing in those rooms. And that thing was half of the population. So men were often not there. Or there'd be like one guy. There was always one guy, right? Women, you know what I'm talking about. There's one guy in the back at the end of the night. We go, and thank you for the men. And then like one guy's cousin, like someone's cousin or boyfriend or whatever, just gets like a high five from everyone. And then we go like, talk to the dudes. And they're like, so I was like, that's not gonna work. I don't feel like that's a productive, effective strategy to actually reach the people who actually really need to be reached in this conversation. And so I started writing a book 4 years ago. And I was told by multiple publishers, men will not buy this book and men don't buy books. And then Hannah, my editor at St. Martin's Press, said, I love this book. And she brought men to the meeting, which no one else had done. These were all female meetings, by the way, who told me those things, which is another thing we can talk about later, which is how we all sort of participate in this culture. And I started writing this and I interviewed a lot of men. I spoke to a lot of men. I read a lot of books and read a lot of data and research, and I sort of realized that although I had felt a lot of pain and trauma from men in my life, and I know every woman here tonight probably has as well, that men were hurting us because men were hurting. And suddenly I just saw this insanely important gap in the conversation that just wasn't happening. And that if we could stop the bleeding, maybe we wouldn't be bled on, right? That hurt people will hurt people. And maybe if we have empathy and we try and understand why they're hurting, maybe it's a lot easier. And maybe we won't be yelling at each other.
Where do gender norms come from?
So gender's made up. Sorry if anyone thought that gender was like if Ben Shapiro is somewhere there in the room, I'm sure he's here. He always loves these kinds of events. Ben Shapiro has told us, and many others, by the way, this is not a unusual perspective, which is to think that gender is rooted in science. Trans people don't exist because there's only male or female in human anatomy or in the animal kingdom, which is totally false. So gender is a social construct. We've made up the fact that women, when you get a girl, you put her in a pink onesie, and if you get a boy, you put him in a blue onesie. And if he has a bow, then that has to mean it's a girl. If you put a bow on a boy, it's crimes against humanity. And we have made up all these things. These are totally made up things. Or men can't wear heels. Men used to wear heels. Heels were invented by men for men. And now we've decided only women wear heels. So these are all made up. And it doesn't mean that they're not valid. It doesn't mean that all women should stop wearing makeup or all men should start wearing high heels. It just means that we need to recognize that these are things that we learned. And we've had this amazing conversation about the things that we've learned as women and girls, right? The stereotypes or the roles, right, that we've taken on from these Disney princesses that we watched on television, or the Barbies that we desperately wanted and some parents got us, but some parents denied them to us, and we really wanted them. And I was denied the sexist childhood I wanted. It was really hard for me. My parents denied the gender binary. So I was very lucky, but even with super progressive parents that were basically like communists and feminists, I still took on these ideals, and we've had this great conversation about rethinking those things. And it's really hard, right, for women, even when we know that it's bad to want to look slimmer or to look a certain way or to not speak up in a meeting. It's hard to go against those things, but we know that we must unlearn them if we want to thrive in society. And where's the conversation about the things that men and boys have learned that might not be helpful for them?
Let me ask you about then the other piece of this, obviously, which is what men should do. Not that you're telling them how to be masculine, but how to be citizens what they owe? And how are you going to engage in politics and democracy and all these people running for president and all these policy questions?
2016, right, we spent so much time in 2016 talking about how Donald Trump is bad for women. And I did this with you on your show, and journalists were having these conversations. And obviously, oh my gosh, he is so awful in so many respects. And I don't have to lay that out for you. I'm sure everyone in this room knows this. I think that 2020 needs to be about how bad Donald Trump is for men. I think that we need to actually unveil the fact that the Trump administration has actually passed policies that have hurt men and white men, particularly. It hurts black men and men of color far more. But his biggest champions, the people that he says that he's here to save, and the people who when he talks in the camera, Donald Trump is speaking directly to white men and to their wives, who happen often to be white women. He's the only thing he's saying is, I see you. And I hear you, and I feel your pain, and this is who's to blame. And it's women and people of color and immigrants and trans people going to the bathroom where the fuck they want. So, but the actual policies, and Jonathan Metzl wrote an entire book about this. It's called Dying of Whiteness, and you should definitely look it up, because it reveals just in detail all of the ways that, from Medicare, obviously healthcare problems, cuts to mental health issues. I went to Montana, where it has the highest rate of suicide after Wyoming, and spoke to people there who are dealing with skyrocketing rates of suicide there. 2/3 of gun violence and gun deaths in the United States are death by suicide, and 80% of those are men. So in a place like Montana, and most of them are dying because they're using guns, because guns are more readily available because of Donald Trump. He is actively fighting against the change that would actually save men and make men's lives far better. And so I don't see the point of a progressive movement that hides those benefits to men when it comes to gender equality, when it comes to progressive candidates. I think it's great to talk about the benefits that it has to women, and obviously we need women to be. Women are leading the democratic fight. Women are leading the progressive movement. But I don't understand why it's bad to talk about how men benefit from being in this movement too. Donald Trump is throwing a better party, and our party needs to be more fun. It needs to be a block party. Everyone has to be welcome, and everyone needs to be having fun, because it is more fun. So let's not hide how fun it is. That's my message. Vote for me. No, 2020.
Liz Plank.
I can't. I'm Canadian, so.